Well, what is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I'm going to take a deeper, more in-depth look into the New York Giants schedule going into 2022. Yesterday, of course, we were all excited. We found out the order of our opponents, and I want to break down the order, how it may be more or less beneficial to the New York Giants, talk about the overall strength of the schedule, and talk about, some of the best case and worst case scenarios, at least in my opinion. Take that for what you will. Opinions are meaningless, especially when it comes to schedule. Football is such a week by week sport. The strength of an opponent could change from week to week. All you got to do is go back and look at our 2020 schedule. We played the Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow. We played the Dallas Cowboys without Dak Prescott. We played several other backup quarterbacks that year that we kind of took advantage of on a week by week basis. And that Giants team probably wasn't quite as good as a 6-win team. And I completely understand both perspectives when it comes to predicting this year's win total for the New York Giants, whether it be on the low end or the high end. If you look at the Giants over the last 5 years, they haven't given us much to cheer about. They have not won more than 6 games over their last 5 seasons. They've won a total of 22 games, which is 4.5 games or so a year on average. We've won 4, 6, 4, 5, and 3, dating all the way back to 2017 for 22 games total. So for people that don't think this team's going to win more than 4 or 5 games this year with a new coaching staff and all the new variables, I understand that. And for people that think that we could win more than the projected win total, like Vegas does, they had the New York Giants open it up at 7.5, and we'll get into exactly why that is. I could understand that as well. The Giants are playing a much softer schedule than in years past. When you look at the divisions we're going up against, you're going up against arguably the 2 worst divisions in football outside of the NFC East. We're playing 4 members from the AFC South. Name me a weaker division in the AFC. AFC East isn't. AFC West isn't. AFC North isn't. We're probably playing the weakest division in the NFC outside of potentially ours, if you want to argue that. Maybe you could say the NFC South, but the NFC North outside of the Packers don't really have world beaters. So the Giants aren't going up against any incredible opponents. And look at the quarterbacks we're going up against outside of the division. The 11 quarterbacks we face are Aaron Rodgers, of course, a top 10 quarterback. Lamar Jackson, probably still a top 10 quarterback. Kirk Cousins, outside of the top 10. Matt Ryan, definitely outside of the top 10. Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Davis Mills, and Drew Lock or Geno Smith. And I know a lot of the detractors will say, well, look who our quarterback is with Daniel Jones. That's absolutely right. But I'm analyzing our opponents and talking about whether or not I think we can win more football games than maybe you think that we possibly can, or less than you think we possibly can. I'm kind of in the middle, and I don't want to give a defined win total because it's such a week-to-week game. I'll probably do a more in-depth schedule breakdown like a week or 2 before the season starts and come to my final conclusion. But if I had to put a roundabout number on it right now, I'd probably say about where Vegas has us. About 7. And this is the major reason why. Not necessarily our improvements, because I do think it's going to take some time for these rookies to gel and improve on both sides of the ball. Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal. There's 4 new members, I should say, of the offensive line. That'll take some time. You have a new defensive scheme, new offensive scheme. But this is the projected strength of schedule for the New York Giants. And this is not based off of the 2021 win totals, which I think is irrelevant. There's so much turnover in the NFL. Teams play different schedules in a year in, year out basis. This is based off of the projected win totals for the 2022 season. And is this a perfect formula? No. Football's unpredictable. Last year, nobody thought the Raiders, Eagles, and Bengals would have as good a years as they did. There's always some surprise teams. But based off the Vegas projections, the New York Giants are all the way to the left, meaning they have the easiest schedule based off the projections in the entire NFL, which is probably why Vegas had the New York Giants projected win total at 7.5 when the lines initially came out. If you go all the way to the right and all the way down, the Kansas City Chiefs have the most challenging schedule. Major reason being for that is the AFC West is absolutely loaded, and it's why I would actually probably predict, like I said in my live stream yesterday, the under on the Chiefs win total at 11. But that is why they have the New York Giants at 7.5. That is the only reasonable conclusion. And maybe they're looking at the other variables, the improved offensive line, potentially, hopefully the improved play caller. But I think if you're a person that's trying to be as realistic as they possibly can, that thinks the Giants could win 8 or 9 games, it's based off their opponents this year as opposed to previous years. Last year, we went up against guys like Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, right? We had a pretty challenging schedule. This year, not so much. But let's dive into the overall schedule, at least the way it looks going in. The first thing that really popped out to me when I saw this schedule, outside of just the opponents, The Giants, everything broke right for them in terms of the home away. Last year, we played 9 road games, 8 home games. So this year, you're going to play 9 home games and 8 road games. So that's good news, right? Normally, you're going to play better at home, or at least you hope you're going to play better at home. In addition to that, when it came to the London game, the New York Giants are actually a road team in that game, even though it's a neutral field game, which means we really, truly only have 7 road games this year, as opposed to 9 home games. So things really broke out well there. Also, early on, the Giants play 3 straight home games. I can't remember the last time that was the case for the New York Giants, which is great. Of course, we traveled to London after that, but to be able to stay home for 3 straight weeks, maybe you win a game that you don't necessarily expect in that grouping. The Giants had the opportunity to accept the bye after the London game. They chose to not take it, probably due to the fact that it's so early in the season. It's only week 5 against the Green Bay Packers. They then come back home against the Baltimore Ravens and don't have their bye until week 9. So the Giants, I'm assuming, wanted to have that bye a little later into the season, especially being that now this is the second year where they play an extra game. In an ideal world, you want your bye as close to the middle of the season as possible to kind of recharge the batteries. But let's jump into the overall schedule. First week at Tennessee. Not a great opponent to go up against week 1. They lost A.J. Brown, so the offense may not be quite as good as it was last year, but this team is built around the run game, and it's built around the defense. This was a defense last year that was still top 7 or 8 in the league. They don't have many losses there, and this is a New York Giants offense that's probably still trying to find their ways week 1. New scheme, young offensive line. So I think we're going to be clicking on all cylinders in this game? No. If the Giants are going to have any chance in this game, obviously, it starts with stopping Derrick Henry, or at least containing Derrick Henry, which will be a huge challenge. And I think the best defense against that is the Giants having some success on offense, which will be challenging on the road against the Tennessee Titans. If you want to think optimistically, last year, the Titans lost their first game. They also had a hiccup at home. I believe it was against the Houston Texans in which they lost. They were 7-2 at home, however, last year. We'll see how Ryan Tannehill performs based off last year. The New York Giants, at least right now, come in as a 6.5-point dog. And yeah, I mean, week 1, all the variables I just mentioned. Mike Vrabel's been the head coach there for a while as well. It'll be Brian Daboll's first, time as a head coach for the New York Giants. I'm clearly going to favor the Tennessee Titans. After that, you have 3 straight home games, and I see no reason why the New York Giants can't take 2 out of 3 here. I'm not saying they will, but I definitely think they can. They open as favorites against the Carolina Panthers. This was a team that we destroyed last year. It's going to be the home opener. I think it's a game we could clearly win. Sam Darnold's not a world beater at quarterback. The Giants are 2.5-point favorites. I think they win this game. Then you got the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night. Obviously, we're going to be dogs in that game. I think right now we're probably about 4.5, 5-point dogs, because I saw the line on the road was about 7 for the Thanksgiving game. The line for the Cowboys against the Giants at home has not come out yet, but I'd guess it'd be about a 4 to 4.5-point spread favoring the Dallas Cowboys on the road going up against the New York Giants. Giants have not beaten Dak since 2016. Of course, the Cowboys did lose some pieces on that team, and maybe this year the Giants could find a way to get a split. It's a divisional game. I never write off any divisional game, and maybe they can find a way to get a split against the Dallas Cowboys. The Bears at home. This is a team that we seem to play every single year. Justin Fields, young quarterback, learning a new scheme early in the season, 3rd straight home game. I think everything sets up well for the Giants to potentially win this game. So I don't see a reason to think that the New York Giants can't potentially get off to a 2-2 start. Is 1-3 possible? Absolutely. Is 3-1 possible? Absolutely. We'll have to wait and see how the games play out, but I think 2-2 is fair. After that, you go up against the Green Bay Packers, neutral site game. I don't care. Aaron Rodgers, Packers. I know they lost Devontae Adams. I still got to give that team a lot of credit, a lot of respect. I'm obviously going to favor the Packers in this game. Then the Baltimore Ravens, a team we went up against a couple of years ago. They knocked our socks off. The interesting storyline going into this game, of course, is going to be Don Wink Martindale. But the fact you're traveling back from London, you don't have the bye, you figure you're going to be a little bit more worn down than if you were, traveling back home from the States. I don't love this matchup. I think Baltimore's a better football team. But if you want to say the biggest weakness on our defense is our pass defense due to the fact that we do have some liabilities in the secondary, maybe you could argue we could stick with them if Wink could draw up a good game plan against Lamar Jackson and that running attack. But obviously, I'm going to favor Baltimore. So if I'm looking at this realistically, I think you're looking at 2-4 at best case scenario, 3-3 after this. And I'll go over really how I look at the entirety of the schedule at the end of it. Then you got the Jacksonville Jaguars and Seattle Seahawks, both on the road. But you got Trevor Lawrence, young quarterback, again, new scheme. The Jaguars, to me, didn't do a whole lot to improve that offense. I think this is a game we should win. When you look at our schedule, this is a game we should win. And this next 4-game stretch is the bread and butter for this New York Giants season. They got to find a way to win at least 3 of these games if they want to have any opportunity to exceed expectations and win 7, 8, 9, 10 games. They have got to win at least 3 out of these next 4. The Jaguars, the Seahawks. Seahawks, who's the quarterback? Drew Lock, Geno Smith. There's turnover with that team. They seem to be in rebuild mode. Maybe Pete Carroll surprises me and they win more games than I expect. But in that tough NFC West, I think it's going to be tough sledding for the Seahawks. I think they're in clear transition mode. They're probably going to draft a quarterback next year. I did like the addition of Charles Cross. They needed to improve the offensive line. I will say the home factor is definitely probably more important there than most destinations. The 12th man, Seattle, we know that's a tough place to play, not to mention it'll be 2 straight road games. So would I be shocked if the Giants have a hiccup here and lose this game? No, but I think it's a game they could clearly win. And if they win it, maybe you're 4-4 going into the bye. I don't think that's crazy to think that. You reset the batteries, you go up against Houston and Detroit. Both games that are clearly winnable. Not saying they're going to win both, but they're both winnable. Houston is not a very good team. I would say they're one of the few teams that you could probably definitively say that we're better than. And we're at home and we're off the bye. Yeah, I think that's a game going into the season as a Giants fan. You should expect a W. Then you have Detroit after that. Detroit, improving team. They surprised people last year. They definitely played tough down the stretch for Dan Campbell. I like the way they're building their team in the trenches. Jared Goff's still the quarterback. A game we could clearly win at home. I wouldn't go into this game expecting like definitely we're going to win, but it's a game I think we'd be slightly favored and a game we could definitely win. Then the schedule gets a lot tougher. You got at Dallas, you got Washington, you have the Eagles, you have at Washington. So you have 4 straight divisional games in a row. The second time we'll be playing Dallas, the highlight game of the season on Thanksgiving. Can't wait to see this game. We have really only one primetime game, and that is Monday Night Football Week 3 against the Dallas Cowboys, a game in which I plan to be in attendance. This would be the other nationally televised game, and I think we play the Vikings, if I'm not mistaken, on Christmas Eve. That'll probably be nationally televised as well on a Saturday. But this is the game I'm most looking forward to. Thanksgiving, Giants. We haven't played on Thanksgiving since 2009, and you have an opportunity to ruin Dallas's Turkey Day. I don't think there's a whole lot of pressure on the Giants going into this game. The Cowboys are clearly the favorite in this game. They're at home. It's Thanksgiving. They absolutely should win this game. So the Giants should go in this, acting free, and maybe they build some confidence after those 4 games, and maybe they go in there and they pump their chests out and they surprise the world. I'm obviously going to pick Dallas in this game at home on Thanksgiving, but you never know. Then you have the Washington football team at home. I would say a win here. I think we could split with Washington this year, so if I'm going to pick one, I'm going to pick the game at home. They're probably at least slightly better. At least some people may say that with all the young players we have on our team and the turnover on the roster. But we always seem to have Washington's number. I think we could easily win, at least get a split against Washington this year. The Eagles at home. Obviously, a game I always have circled on my calendar. It'll be a tough opponent. The Eagles last year exceeded expectations. They also had a lot of additions, and a lot of people think they are the team to beat in this division this year. The Eagles always seem to have our number, but not so much the last couple of years. If there was one thing that Joe Judge did well, it seemed like he started to bring things back in our favor when it came to going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Is it a game we can win? Yeah, it's a divisional game. We're at home. I don't think the Eagles are the second coming of the LA Rams, but obviously with A.J. Brown, it adds another punch to that offense. Much like the Titans with the Eagles, it's going to start in the trenches. You have to find a way to stop that ground game, something the Giants did well last year when they played the Eagles at home. They did a good job containing the run. They forced Jalen Hurts to throw the football, and Jalen Hurts is not the best passer. If you could do that, you force some turnovers, you get out of there potentially with a win. Then you have at Washington on the road before you then play the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings are a good team in my opinion. They're actually one of my sleepers to potentially win the NFC North this year. I think they will be improved. Last year, if you look at their schedule, they lost a number of games that were really close down the stretch. They improved the defense somewhat. They have a ton of weapons on offense. I respect Minnesota. This will be a very hard game to win. Then you play the Colts, who are a good team on paper, have a good offensive line, but you have to hope by that point, things are starting to gel on both lines for the New York Giants. Would I be shocked if this was a game where the New York Giants could pull an upset? No, absolutely not. If I was to pick one upset this year, this would probably be the one. If I had to pick one, because it's at home, because it's later in the season, a young team, new coach, you figure at that point, hopefully, if we're relatively healthy, we're playing our best football of the year. And then at the Eagles to close out the season, a game in which if the New York Giants are not playing for the playoffs, I'm hoping it's a game that the Eagles are, because I would love to ruin that opportunity for that football team. But when I really analyze the schedule and look over it, I love the 3 straight home games. I love the divisions that we're playing. I do think it affords us some opportunities to win some more games than some people may have anticipated going into the year. Um, I think it comes down to this. If we could go 3-3 in the division, which I'm not projecting, I have us more in line with 2-4. But if you could go 3-3 in division and you could win 4 out of 6 games between the Jaguars, the Seahawks, the Texans, the Lions, the Panthers, and the Bears. If you can win 4 of those 6 games, which I think is realistic, you're already looking at 7 wins. And then maybe you pull an upset or 2, and maybe you could win 8 or 9 games. For the optimistic Giants fan, I think that's the way you look at it. The pessimistic Giant fans are going to say, well, look at years past. We've had injuries. We're not necessarily better than those 6 teams you rattled off. We're probably more so on an even playing field. I'll chalk it up to 3-3. I think we're going to go 1-5 or 2-4 in the division, and that's why the pessimistic, or maybe they would consider themselves realistic Giants fans, have us more in the 5 or 6 win category. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I'm kind of in the middle. I'm not going to get way too high and project 9 or 10 wins, but I also think this team is better than 4 wins. If you look at last year, the Giants won 4 games. Everybody on the team got hurt. We played a more challenging schedule. The other thing that I want to throw into this when you're predicting, or at least projecting, how many wins the New York Giants can make, think about our backup quarterback last year. If Jones goes down this year, you have a quarterback that could come in and at least compete against some of these teams that we have on our schedule with a guy like Tyrod Taylor. We also, what Mike Glennon could do. Taylor is a proven quarterback in the NFL. I think he could keep the Giants afloat, and he could beat weaker opponents like the Lions, like the Texans, teams such as that, where Mike Glennon really couldn't. We had a stagnant offense when he came into the lineup. Not to say that Daniel Jones was blowing the doors off, blowing any doors off, but obviously it was a major downgrade. I don't think that you would have nearly as big of a downgrade if Jones were to go down this year. So that's why I think the Giants between 6 and 8 wins is probably where I have us. 8 being the optimistic side, 6 being more of the realistic and pessimistic. So that's why I'm kind of in the middle at 7. That's the way I feel right now. Maybe I change my win total as the season fast approaches, when we see these guys perform in preseason, in training camp. Maybe there'll be some injuries on the team or some injuries on some of our opponents' teams. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But the way I'm looking at this season overall, I want to see progress, and I'm going to take it a week-by-week basis. That's my outlook. I hope this team gets better. I'm really excited to see the younger players on this team, and hoping that both the offensive and defensive lines progress. At the end of the day, if we're going to exceed expectations, the biggest factor outside of health will be Daniel Jones. Can Daniel Jones take the big step up with the improved scheme, with the improved play caller, with the improved offensive line, and what you hope are improved weapons? Tony going into year 2, I think he will be utilized better in a scheme like this, and of course the drafting of Wendell Robinson. And please, can Kenny Golladay catch a couple of touchdowns? As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.